Welcome back to Mrs. B History, and today we're continuing with the Industrial Revolution made easy. So here's a quick question. What are you wearing right now? Honestly, look at the label. Is it cotton? Because if it is, the chances are it was made in a factory by a machine and it wasn't very expensive, unless of course it's a popular brand. That's because clothes are produced in factories. However, that's not always been the case. Before the 1760s, every single piece of cotton cloth in the world was made by hand, by individual people in their own homes, one thread at a time. Now, the story of how that changed, how we went from homespun thread to factory produced cotton in the space of about 30 years, is one of the most bonkers chains of invention in history. It basically involved a knocked over spinning wheel, a wig maker who accidentally became an industrial giant, and a man who named his greatest invention after a donkey. So, let's go. So first, let's understand how cotton was actually made before any of this happens. Now, creating cotton textiles involved two stages. First, there was the spinning. They took raw cotton fibers and twisted them, winding them together to make a thread. The thinner and stronger the thread, the more valuable it was. The second part involved weaving, stretching threads lengthways and interleaving them widthways to produce fabric. Now, since the Roman times, British families had done both of these jobs at home. In the 18th century, women and children in poor farming communities with no iPhones or television to keep them occupied earned extra money by spinning cotton thread at their spinning wheels. That thread was then collected and taken to a single adult, usually a man, who operated a hand loom in his house to weave it into cloth. The whole system was called the cottage industry because the work happened in cottages. The process of spinning and weaving was slow and it was very labour intensive. One person working flat out could produce only a tiny amount of thread per day, and no matter how many spinners you had, the hand loom weaver kept running out of thread to work with because spinning simply couldn't keep up with weaving demand. In order for cotton clothes to become more affordable, this situation needed to be fixed, and that someone that fixed it was an illiterate handloom weaver from Lancashire, who may or may not have had a very clumsy family. Now Hargreaves was a weaver and a carpenter from Lancashire. He couldn't read or write, he wasn't a scientist or an engineer, he was just a man who was fed up with not having enough thread and wanted to find a way to produce more of it faster. In 1764 he invented the spinning jenny, and there's a very famous story about how that idea came to him. The story goes that one day Hargreaves came home and accidentally knocked over his wife's spinning wheel. He watched it fall on its side and noticed that even lying there on the floor, the wheel and the spindle were still spinning. It was still turning. And then he thought to himself, what if the spindle didn't have to be horizontal? What if you put multiple spindles upright, side by side, and spun them all at once with one wheel? Now, is this story true? Almost certainly not. Historians have checked, and his wife's name was Elizabeth, not Jenny. He did have multiple daughters, but none of them were called Jenny either. Jenny was most likely just a Lancashire slang for engine. But honestly, the story's so good that it absolutely should be true. So what did the spinning jenny actually do? Well, Hargreaves' original machine could feed 8 spindles at once from one wheel, and later this version grew to 80. This meant that one person could produce 8 and then 80 times the thread that they could manage to produce before. For the first time, spinning could actually keep pace with weaving. The cottage industry was about to get an upgrade. But there was a catch. The spinning jenny produced fine, delicate thread. It looked great, but it snapped the moment you put it under real pressure. What the cotton industry needed was something stronger. Enter Richard Arkwright, and I cannot stress this enough. Richard Arkwright started his working life as a wig maker, not as an engineer, and again, not as a scientist. He was a wig maker in Bolton who travelled around the country collecting people's discarded hair to turn into wigs. He was, by all accounts, relentlessly ambitious and extraordinarily driven. Illiterate as a child, he taught himself to read as an adult. He invented a waterproof dye for wigs, fashionable periwigs of the time, and used the income to fund the next obsession that he came up with, and that was textile machinery. In 1769, working with a clockmaker called John Kay, Richard Arkwright invented the water frame, a machine that used flowing water to power spinning and produced a strong, coarse thread which was much more durable and less delicate than the Jenny's thread. This thread wouldn't snap. It was tough, it could handle the warp, the lengthways threads in weaving, which needed real strength. However, Richard Arkwright had an even bigger contribution than this. His real genius was the factory. In 1771, he built the world's first water-powered cotton mill at Crompton in Derbyshire. He brought workers together under one roof, by a river, running machines around the clock. Before Arkwright, cotton was made by individuals at home, one bit at a time. After Arkwright, factories employed hundreds of workers using dozens of machines, meaning that there was continuous production. So Arkwright didn't just invent a machine, he invented the modern factory. He literally went from collecting hair to make wigs to revolutionizing cotton production, creating factories, and being knighted as Sir Richard Arkwright. Not bad at all. So, going back to before, we have fine but weak thread from the Jenny and strong but coarse thread from the water frame. What the industry needed was someone to combine the two. Someone who grew up using both machines, spotted their individual flaws, and decided to fix both problems at once. Now, Samuel Crompton was born in Bolton in 1753 and grew up spinning cotton on a spinning jenny for his family. And from a very early age he was irritated by it. The threads kept snapping. He was convinced he could do better. He spent years, in fact he spent all of his spare time and all of his spare money designing a new machine that combined the best bits of the jenny and the best bits of the water frame. And in 1779 he finally completed it, creating a machine that drew out cotton fibres like the jenny and gave them a final twist like the water frame, producing a thread that was both fine and strong. Now remember our previous video on Bolton and Watt, because here's where it connects. In 1785, one of Bolton and Watt's newly invented steam engines was used to power a Crompton mule for the first time. And at that point, everything changed. You no longer needed a fast-moving river to power your mill. Now you could build a cotton factory anywhere. And the amount of cotton thread produced in Britain absolutely exploded. One factory worker overseeing a steam-powered spinning mule could produce exponentially more cotton than one spinner at a wheel. The cost of fine cotton thread dropped by 90% in the 10 years from 1785 to 1795. 90% in 10 years. That was an absolute game changer. And then the power loom arrived. Bolton and Watt's steam engine were attached to a weaving loom, and suddenly the whole process, the spinning and the weaving, could be mechanised and run by steam. By 1813, there were 2,400 power looms in Britain. This had grown a huge amount, so that by 1857 there were 250,000. Meanwhile, individual hand loom weavers had all started to lose their cottage jobs. At their peak, there had been around 240,000 hand loom weavers in their home. By 1862, there were just 3,000 left. A whole way of life had gone. Maybe we're going through a similar thing today with AI taking away jobs from some industries, whilst like factories, other jobs previously unheard of have been created as the world progresses. This, however, at the time was one of the most dramatic collapses of way of life in British history, and it happened within living memory of the people it affected. Now the hand loom weavers didn't disappear quietly, but that's a story for a future video. So let's quickly bring it all together. Before the 1760s, cotton was made slowly by hand in cottages, basically a thread at a time. Then things started to change. Hargreaves invented the spinning jenny, which meant workers could spin 8 threads at once instead of just one. That was a big deal. Next came Arkwright and the water frame. This machine made much stronger threads and led to the rise of factories, where lots of people worked together in one place instead of at home. Then Crompton invented a spinning mule, which could make threads that was both fine and strong. It was amazing, but sadly, he didn't patent it, so he didn't actually make much money from his idea. And then steam power arrived and supercharged everything. Machines could run faster and almost anywhere, not just near water. Within a few decades, a way of life that had been around since Rome and Britain completely changed. Oh, and if you're wearing that cotton t-shirt right now, you can actually trace it all the way back to a spinning wheel getting knocked over in a small cottage in Lancashire in 1764. Or, maybe of course, that's just a funny bit of slang for engine. Either way, history has helped to create what you're wearing today. So if you found this was useful, smash like and subscribe to Mrs. B History. There are more Industrial Revolution videos coming. And comment below. Do you feel sorry for Samuel Crompton? Because I absolutely do. Also, do you think the factory system was a good thing or a bad thing overall? Please feel free to drop your thoughts and I will make sure that I comment on them. See you next time.